Good afternoon, Math 7 and Math 8 teachers. This video will discuss the STAAR review plan for both courses and give you a clear picture of how the review should be run. What I'm going to talk about a little bit is the rationale as to why we decided to create this review plan, what information is being provided for teachers, what details can you identify from the unit plan, what are any actions and next steps that you have, and then where you are going to post any questions. Overview of the rationale. After reviewing the common assessment data, comparing S1 to S2, we saw a decline in performance in both Math 7 and Math 8. And when we compare the overall performance to the goal, both Math 7 and Math 8 unfortunately have not met the district goal that we have set. Math 7 is a little bit further away from the goal than Math 8, but there is still work to be done for both courses. As a result, in previous years, we haven't really provided an explicit detailed plan for STAAR review. It's kind of been more of a free-for-all or open, just suggestions. So we decided to take action and actually create a plan that provides teachers with very clear, precise information and also gives them the opportunity to expose students to the level of rigor that they will see on the STAAR exam. So what's being provided? Each day, there's a pre-assessment that we will start with. So whether you're a Math 7 or a Math 8 teacher, you will begin class with a pre-assessment. Based on the number of questions on the pre-assessment, students should have anywhere from 3 to 3.5 minutes to answer each question. That is the way that you should time the pre-assessment because that's about the same amount of time that they have to answer each STAAR question. So we want to make sure that we're matching that so we're giving students an accurate time allotment to make sure that they're using their time wisely as well. As students are completing the pre-assessment, the teachers should be actively monitoring and checking their work. The students who are not successful on the pre-assessment will then participate in the teacher-led small group for the next set of activities for the day. The students who are successful on the pre-assessment will complete the same activities but with a partner or in a peer small group. On the unit plan, there are specific details as to how teachers should identify which students are successful and which students are not successful and who should be in the teacher group versus their peer group. In the unit plan, there are also details about each activity and how teachers should be executing and extra suggestions to help allow that activity to flow really smoothly. Answer keys for Math 7 for the pre-assessment as well as the activities are at the end of the Word document for each day. For Math 8, the answer keys are a separate PDF file. All of the daily resources can be found on SharePoint using the STAAR Review Week icon. There are also 2 assessments that are being provided called STAAR Progress Monitors. For Math 7, these will be administered on the Friday of each week because there are 2 weeks provided for STAAR review. For Math 8, the first STAAR Progress Monitor will be administered on a Wednesday and the second will be administered on the Friday because we only have 1 week of STAAR review. Both progress monitors are completely multiple choice. There is no free response portion of this progress monitor. There are Scantrons in Aware that teachers will need to print ahead of time and make sure that they scan at the end of the day that they assess the STAAR Progress Monitor. The very next day, I will do an assessment very similar to what I send out via email after unit exam scores are finalized and give an overview of how our students are performing as well as any tips or suggestions for maybe certain problems that teachers may want to review the next day or the very last day before they take the STAAR exam. When setting cut scores, in Aware, the approaches, meets, and masters thresholds will be the same as they have been throughout the year for unit exams. However, we are connecting this exam to the Common Assessment app. Although there's no free response, there will be a curve score that students will be given, and that curve score is what will go in the grade book for both STAAR Progress Monitors. In the table, you can see how we determined each threshold based on the STAAR performance goal. So as you'll see, the 2 floor is listed as approaches. So you may be wondering why is that labeled as the floor for 2 versus the floor for 3. Since the STAAR Progress Monitors are not cumulative exams, and they do not cover every topic that we've gone over throughout the year. It only addresses maybe 2 to 3 days worth of material. We want to make sure that we are not getting inflated views and overlooking the students who are barely meeting that approaches threshold. So any student that earns an AP2 should still be on our radar as a student who we need to provide support and intervention to throughout this STAAR review time. We do not want to overlook and hope that they pass the STAAR test, and then unfortunately the results end up coming back differently. So for the 3 threshold, we decided to create the halfway point between approaches and meets. This is a comfortable, safe zone. So any student who scores a 3 or above, we feel like those students should be successful on the STAAR exam as well, even though the information that's assessed is not the entire year's worth of curriculum. And then, of course, the 4 and the 5 are just the general thresholds for meets and masters. Now we want to dive into what information is provided on the unit plan. So in the key resources and text section, you'll see an overview of the lessons or topics covered. For Math 7, that's 2 weeks worth of information. For Math 8, that's only 1 week. In that same box, you will see suggestions for tutorial resources. These resources were created the last school year by teachers on the course team. You'll see what information is provided and just suggestions that teachers can either use during lunch or after school tutorials during this STAAR review time as well. There's also a section for misconceptions. If you'll notice, this information came from Lead Forward. So it's broken down by subcluster or general topic. In the middle, you'll find a list of common misconceptions and mistakes that students tend to make. And in the middle section, next to each mistake, if there's an asterisk, that means that this particular misconception was assessed on a STAAR question. So if you look at the first bullet in the middle column that says not being able to transition between the verbal description, table, graph, and equation of linear relationships, that means that students being able to go from a verbal description to a table, or a table to a graph, or a graph to an equation was assessed on a STAAR test. If you're wondering what that specific question could look like, the very last column titled Interesting Items, it lists the TEKS being assessed, the year that the STAAR release question, and the item or question number. So you can refer to these interesting items to see exactly how this mistake was assessed on the STAAR test. Any mistake that does not have an asterisk behind it means that this is also a common misconception students tend to have. It just has not been assessed in that manner on a STAAR question. Just like with any other unit plan, there's a daily calendar. Same thing is provided for the STAAR review week. You'll notice the dates for the assessment are included, the topics for the day are included, and then any other dates that are important or relevant during that time. The key vocabulary section is also provided. There's just no PowerPoint or PDF attached because all of these terms students should have seen at some point throughout the school year. But we do want to make sure that students are exposed to it and are familiar with the terms for each topic. Any vocabulary term that has an asterisk at the end, very similar to the common misconception, means that that particular term was included in the language on a STAAR assessed question. So under Geometry 3D, you'll see the word diameter. That means that the word diameter was included on a STAAR question. So we want to make sure that our students are familiar with the terminology that's being used so that they can break down the question and be able to answer it successfully. In the how section, there's a detailed description about how students should be, one, executing the activities, as well as suggestions for teachers to help this process run smoothly. Because there are a lot of moving parts in order for all of these activities to run, it is important that teachers take time to really dive into the how section for each day, that they internalize it and they understand how they need to execute each activity and each part of the activity and of the lesson for each STAAR review day. Since there are activities that will require a teacher-led small group, Some feedback and helpful information has been provided as well. Math 7, it will look like the image that you see on the screen that says additional support for small group. And that gives teachers some guiding questions and some tips as to how they can lead students through some of the activities. For Math 8, in the same how box, it says teacher-led small group. And in that section, you'll find some tips as well to help support your students who are working in the teacher-led small group during that particular activity. Some next steps and actions for you as a teacher. Although a lot of information is being provided, there are still some actions that you need to take. The first is resetting behavior expectations. So because the process for STAAR review is structured where students complete a pre-assessment, then there's a lot of activity, peer, group practice, and then at the very end, there's kind of an opportunity for them to work independently. All of those moving pieces means that behavior has to be in place. Since the teacher is working with a small group, they don't have the opportunity to be as mobile and make sure that all students are accountable. So it's important that students are holding themselves accountable and that you have a system in place in order for them to do that. Which leads to the second point, developing an incentive system. Some teachers already have one. This is a great opportunity to either revise the incentive system you have or to continue on with the one that already works. If you don't have an incentive system already developed in your classroom, this is a great opportunity for you to try something new and to really get your kids engaged. It may even be beneficial to ask students what are some incentives that will help motivate them during this STAAR review time. Daily exit tickets are not created for the STAAR review materials. However, if you would like to keep track of how students are doing on this particular day or at the end of the day, you are more than welcome to create those exit tickets. I would suggest using questions from previous unit exams in order to develop this. You can also use 2017 and 2018 STAAR questions since we've already assessed the common assessment. Second to last, planning and preparation. Again, there are so many moving parts in order for this review plan to run smoothly. So it's important that you're taking the time to internalize the information that is provided in the unit plan. You understand what materials students need. You have a structure for how students will obtain those materials while you're working in the teacher-led small group, a system for them to check your work. All of these things are listed in the unit plan. So just make sure that you are planned and prepared ahead of time and you have all of your ducks in a row in order for this STAAR review week and time process to go through successfully. And then last, as mentioned earlier, is the Scantrons. So not only will you need to print Scantrons the day before the STAAR progress monitors will be assessed, but you also need to make sure that at the end of the day, you are scanning those Scantrons so that the very next day, there's data in Aware for me to pull and review in order to send the follow-up email. Last thing, if you have any questions about anything that has been discussed, or as you're reviewing the resources that are provided, a question arises in both Math 7 and Math 8 on your course teams page. If you click the Notes tab at the very top, and then you select the arrow that appears in the left-hand corner, it's the top left-hand corner, you want to find the page that says STAAR Review Resources and Questions, and there's a table. There's an opportunity for you to place your name, the lesson name or number or what the document is that you have a question about, and then what your question is. And I will get back to you via email or on Teams regarding an answer to your question. Thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this third and final virtual PD session.